and find these, I don't know what to call them, but and they killed just cold-blooded all Libyans. This is Gaddafi. This is his dream. This is the one. He's crazy. He thinks like he's gonna be the one. He owns the world. Basically, he got these people, bring them all the way to Libya to kill Libyans, and he's naming himself the King of Africa or King of the Kings. Or these people, they will be arrested soon, and in Libya it will be very clear. The unfortunate part, this has happened, and the only things that I wish from the international, all the international countries, especially the United Kingdom and United States, at least to put on bargain. Let's to watch all these planes that had actually landed in Maitiga airport and bringing these militias down there.
Okay, Faraj Najam, as Rashid pointed out there, the recruitment of these mercenaries was part of a very deliberate strategy by Colonel Gaddafi. It's not something that started last week or a month ago. In fact, this started many years ago in the 1980s. When did it begin, and how large a force of mercenaries does the colonel have?
Well, we don't know the exact size and the nature of such recruitment, but one thing that we're aware of, that this is part of the investment network that Gaddafi has extended all over the world. He's been going to Africa, and he's been offering all sorts of investments and money and so on to these despotic, often African leaders, in return for all sorts of loyalties, sometimes for political conversion to Islam, loyalty to Africa. And this network, it does not just stop with Africa. It goes beyond this. I think it goes to Latin America, Asia, and Europe as well. We understand that some of these core elites were trained, ironically, in Pakistan as well as in India in the same time. So Gaddafi has used the wealth that he has at his disposal to make sure that these people are loyal, well-funded, and are ready when they are called upon. And that's what has happened.
Aliyah Brahimi, I want to turn now to tribal affiliations in Libya and how these pockets of power play out and what is going on right now. You made a statement not so long ago in which you said that in Libya it will be the tribal system that will hold the balance of power, not the military. Tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't overemphasize the tribal element. I mean, yeah, I'll just clarify that now. But in actual fact, Gaddafi has tended to perpetuate his rule through a strategy of divide and rule among the tribes, but also within them. And I think, various power centers are defined tribally. That can't be denied. But in actual fact, it's almost in opposition to any unified sort of armed forces. Because as I say, we don't have the same situation where there's a robust armed forces under responsible command and indeed unified command that can actually defect. In actual fact, what we have is a deliberately fragmented and dispersed armed forces, and then a series of overlapping militias overriding those in a sense. So the situation is very, very different from the situation we saw in both Egypt and Tunisia.
Faraj Najam, as Aliyah points out there, we shouldn't be overemphasizing the role that tribes play in Libya. But during that speech that Colonel Gaddafi made on television on Tuesday night, I mean, he did make a point of saying that in Libya, all tribes support him. He said, all tribes support me. Was he being a little bit delusional there?
Absolutely. Tribes are not going to be a major feature in future Libya. We know from history, and this is from a research I conducted myself, that whenever we have state institutions, we have the rule of law, and we have some sort of justice, economically, socially, and so on, tribes tend to take a second seat, back seat, and they don't play any role in the running of the affairs of the state. But Gaddafi, at this point, he's trying to rally the tribes because he has lost everything, but he has forgotten that he has lost the tribes as well. I mean, you've had all the tribes, starting from the tribes of the east, who were instrumental in dislodging the Italians and the Germans for the benefit of the Allies in World War II, and helping to establish the Emirates and then the Kingdom of Libya, to the tribes in the south who were with the French, dislodging the Italians again and the Germans from the south, but also importantly the tribes of the west, namely Warfella, Tarhuna, Musrata, and so on and so forth. And those tribes have come out publicly and made it very clear that Gaddafi, goodbye, we don't want you.
There is one other card that tribal leaders could play, Rashid, and that is the control they have over the flow of oil. Last Sunday, the leader of the AlJazeera tribe, which is in the east, threatened to stop the flow of oil to the western part of the country unless the attacks on the protesters stopped. Is it likely that this, if they do stop the oil, that it would perhaps change the behavior of Colonel Gaddafi in Tripoli?
I don't think so. Now, Zwaya, yes, they did, but changing the behavior of Gaddafi, no. That's definitely not. And I'm here on as Dr. Farage, and of course he's very expert on this, and I read most of his book, and he's did a very good job on the research about the tribes in Libya and more. I spoke to one of the highest, without mentioning the name, no tribes, and when I went after exactly what saved his speech, and I talked to him, and I said, you hear the speech, what do you think? He said to me on this, he said, Rashid, the fascists didn't separate us. Do you think somebody like Gaddafi will come and do it now? Libya is gonna be well, and I think the tribes, they have very, very, very good leaders, and they will guide Libya into a democratic country in God's will.
Ali Ibrahimi, do you believe that to be the case? We know that Colonel Gaddafi has stoked rivalries between these different tribes. We know a lot about his divide and rule tactics, but is it likely that he could get to the point where he could set one tribe against the other?
Well, I think the dividing lines are essentially going to be pro and anti-Gaddafi, pro and anti the status quo. And I think that's, you know, it all depends on what he can offer people. So in that sense, I don't think his situation is qualitatively different from any beleaguered autocrat who's making a last stand. But of course, I think he will exploit tribal allegiances. He always has. The Green Book itself, as a political manifesto, is essentially embedding tribalism. It's a call for tribal society and a tribal state. So in actual fact, we can expect him to do that. But really what this boils down to is people that are going to throw their lot in with him, and people that have decided that the writing is on the wall and it's time to defect.
Dr. Najam, is tribalism still a big issue in Libya? Because we know that in recent years, say in the last 20 years or so, it's been on the decline. Tribal kinship has been on the decline because of education, because people have been moving to the cities, urbanization. So perhaps are we making a little bit too much of the different tribes in Libya?
Well, tribes, or tribalism rather, it increases when people are desperate, when there is a sheer absence of law and order, where there are no true representative of people. So people would turn to their tribes for protection, for help, for service. But when